Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into EViews. It's a seriously powerful tool that's designed to help you stop just staring at spreadsheets and actually start uncovering the economic stories that are hidden in your data. The stories that are going to become the backbone of your coursework or even your dissertation. So if you're looking at a giant spreadsheet right now, just a sea of numbers for your thesis, and you're thinking, where in the world do I even start? Well, you are in exactly the right spot. We're going to help you turn that data anxiety into some real analytical confidence. All right, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the big picture, why these tools even matter. Then we'll get our hands dirty with the modeling tools in EViews, learn how to actually read your results, check out some real-world examples, and then finally figure out how to wrap it all up in a nice polished report. Okay, let's just dive right in. Before we start clicking any buttons, it's so important to understand what we're trying to do with all this data in the first place. This is all about going from a boring list of numbers to finding some real, actual insight.
So what even is econometric modeling? Well, at its heart, it's pretty much the science of using data from the past to find these hidden relationships between economic things, like unemployment and inflation, and then using those patterns to understand the world, and maybe even predict what could happen next.
And that is why we use software. Look, tools like EViews do all the incredibly complicated math in the background. And that's a huge deal, because it frees you up to focus on what really matters, thinking critically about what the results actually mean for your research.
All right, let's get into the core tools inside EViews and see how you can actually build a model to start answering those big research questions. This is where your data really starts to come alive. Just think of your whole project as this simple four-step journey. You start with a question, a hypothesis. Then you feed your data into the system. You run the model. And then you figure out what it all means. EViews is basically built to make steps 2 and 3 as painless as possible. Now, the two big tools you'll start with are right here. On the one hand, you've got simple regression. That's your basic, how does X affect Y model? But, the real world is messy, right? So, on the other hand, you have multiple regression, which lets you ask a much more interesting question, like how do X, Z, and A all work together to affect Y? But, it's not enough just to build a model. You have to make sure it's a good one. So EViews has these built-in health checks. Hypothesis tests tell you if your results are the real deal and not just some random fluke, while diagnostic tests are there to catch common problems that could make your whole model unreliable.
All right, this is where the magic happens. You've run your model, and bam! EViews spits out this big table of numbers. Now, don't get intimidated. This is basically the story that your data is trying to tell you, and we're going to learn how to read it together.
So your output is going to look something like this. And I know, it looks like a lot, but we're going to focus on just 4 key numbers that tell you almost everything you need to know: the coefficient, the R-squared, the t-statistic, and the F-statistic.
First up, the coefficient. This number, this is the star of the show. If we look back at our table, the coefficient for our variable x was negative 0.75. That tells us 2 super important things. The relationship is negative, so as x goes up, our outcome goes down, and it tells us the exact size of that effect. For every single unit x goes up, our outcome goes down by 0.75.
Next up is the R-squared. I love this one. Think of it as the storytelling power of your model. An R-squared of 0.65 means that the variables you picked can explain about 65% of whatever's happening with the thing you're trying to predict. That's pretty good. If that number was really low, like 0.1, it would be a sign that your variables just aren't telling much of the story. Okay, so you found an effect, but is it real? That's where the t-statistic comes in. It helps you figure out if a variable is a main character in your story or just some random extra in the background. It tests each variable one by one. A high value, like the negative 3.20 we saw, gives you confidence that this specific variable's effect is not just due to random chance. And finally, we've got the F-statistic. Think of this as the final verdict on your entire model. While the t-statistic looks at each actor individually, the F-statistic asks, does this whole movie make sense? Do all my variables working together actually explain anything meaningful? A high F-statistic says, yep, they sure do.
So, we can read the numbers, but why does any of this actually matter? Let's look at a couple of quick examples of how you can use these tools to tackle some real, tangible economic questions for your own coursework.
A classic. Does raising interest rates actually cool down inflation? Well, with EViews, you can grab decades of historical data from a central bank,
run a regression, and actually model this exact relationship. You'd be testing one of the core ideas of monetary policy.
Your model could end up showing a clear inverse relationship, something like what we see here. And suddenly, you've got powerful evidence for your dissertation. You're no longer just stating a theory from a textbook, you are showing the data to back it all up.
Or hey, maybe you're more interested in finance. You can use EViews to dig into the dynamics of the market. For instance, you could build a model to see how much of a company's stock price is explained by big-picture things like GDP growth, or unemployment, or consumer confidence.
Okay, you have done the hard work. You've run the analysis, and you've found something interesting. Now for the final and absolutely critical step, presenting your findings clearly and professionally in your paper.
Really, the key takeaway here is just clarity. EViews lets you export these really professional-looking tables and graphs, but the real skill is translating those numbers into plain English. Don't just report the coefficient, explain what it means for the real-world problem you're looking at.
And this really gets to the heart of everything. Mastering these tools isn't about being a math genius. It's about making sure that your academic arguments are built on a solid foundation of accurate, robust, and reliable analysis.
So, you now have the framework to go from a totally confusing dataset to a compelling conclusion. The tools are ready, the workflow is clear. The only question left is, what powerful economic story is hidden inside your data just waiting for you to tell it?